Bipolar disorder can be extremely hard to manage, and we've talked about some pretty intense topics on this channel so far. Today, let's do something a little different. Although it's easy to get lost in what we don't like about the illness, that doesn't mean that there aren't at least some positive things that we can focus on. I'm going to talk about several of these, but here's what's so important. If you're ill right now, and especially feeling depressed or irritated, this is not the right time to watch a video like this. We all know that when we're not well, there isn't much that others can say to make a difference. And sometimes someone trying to mention anything positive about the situation can just cause irritation. I mean, I'd be a little put off if I was paralyzed with depression and someone said, "Let's talk about the good parts of bipolar disorder." Psh, psh. But nevertheless, there's still some really neat perspectives about the illness that I'd like to share. Just make sure that you're in a good place right now to hear them, okay? So here we go. The first one is the amazing strength of character that we can get from going through the fires of initiation with this illness. We have to survive and fight harder than most people do. We go through things that most people simply can't even imagine, but these things can make us stronger than the average person. People who are well might have a bad day or get depressed, and what seems like a horrible day to them is like a tiny mosquito bite to us. Our normal days would be the end of the world for someone who isn't used to serious symptoms. So that being said, you can see how strong we are. Yes, I know it's a nasty high price to pay for emotional resilience, but we are polar warriors, and warriors are strong people. So the second one is how bipolar disorder can make us a lot more proactive when it comes to self-care and overall help. If we were like many people who eat fast food 3 times a day, drink every night, stay up late watching shows, and slam 32 ounces of coffee in the morning after just a few hours of sleep, we'd be a total wreck. Not to mention how unhealthy that lifestyle would be in the first place. A lot of us have learned what alcohol does to us, or how much better we feel with good nutritional food, or how big of an outlet exercise can be, or how much medications help many of us, or even how much of a priority sleep is. If we didn't have this illness, we might not take these extra measurements to ensure that we stay well. Now, it might be out of pure survival to avoid suffering, but whatever motivates us to live a little bit of a healthier life really isn't a bad thing. How many of you do things that you probably wouldn't if you didn't have bipolar? So that being said, it's just another positive thing to consider when we go through experiencing a bipolar life. Moving on to the next would be our ability to feel true empathy for others. Empathy can be a rare trait in today's world. Everyone is going so fast and they often ignore the suffering of others because they're too busy, don't care, or have adopted the whole "that's not my problem" attitude. When someone tells me that they're depressed, I just want to give them a giant hug and hear about what's going on because I appreciate so much when others have done that for me. If someone's upset, I've also learned to try and look past the words to see the person who's hurting underneath that just doesn't know how to express the way that they're feeling. Something that I say a lot is how people who are hurting tend to hurt other people. Even starting this channel, it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. It's helped tens of thousands of people, and that never would have happened if bipolar disorder wasn't a part of my journey. What if our empathy actually saves someone's life? I mean, is there anything greater than that? Even though I wouldn't wish this illness on my worst enemy, it's still another thing that I've gained from something that takes so much from us. So next would be the creative side of bipolar disorder. Now, of course, not everyone with bipolar is some creative genius who's going to save the world. Well, I guess that depends on if we're having grandiose manic thoughts, but in reality, most of us have experienced times where our thoughts are so clear, or our mind is firing and coming up with incredible ideas. So many celebrities, writers, musicians, performers, and experts have harnessed this aspect of the illness to accomplish incredible things. Of course, this comes down to balance, and we all know how bad the burnout crash can be if that creativity turns into manic obsession. When I used to get manic, I'd go flying out the door to hang out with friends, start 5 new hobbies, promise the world to everyone, or exert myself to absolute exhaustion at the gym. Now I've learned better balance, and I use that time to work on my channel or research and take notes. I've made some of my best videos when I've been manic. I had to find something that didn't exert myself to the point of unhealthy exhaustion, but at the same time harnesses that creative spark that many of us get. I still have to be really careful though not to obsess about finishing projects, and I'll often set a timer or a time limit just to be safe. If you can find some kind of creative hobby or outlet that doesn't involve excessive socializing, substances, or too much stimulation, you might be amazed at how much you could learn or how good you could get at something. We're known for having a different hobby every other week, and even if we don't master that instrument or finish that painting or build a spaceship out of dryer lint, we still manage to learn and explore or experience so many things that others wouldn't. I've done so many unique things in my life that are completely different. As you may have seen in my video that talks about my life, I shared a few of those. I probably wouldn't have done half of those things if I didn't have bipolar. The next positive thing to consider is how passionate and exuberant we can be about life. When we're balanced or experiencing certain forms of milder mania, our enthusiasm for life can be uplifting and contagious to others. Now, I'm not talking about when we talk so fast or intensely that it causes those around us to get indigestion, but under the right circumstances, we can be really joyful people to be around. I know there's a lot of misery associated with our actions too, and if you're the spouse or family member of someone who has bipolar, it might be hard to hear what I'm saying. I'm sure I could make an hour-long video about the negative aspects of this illness, but remember, we're trying to just focus on some of the positive things here for a change. So this next one is a little funny to mention considering I just made a long video talking about the dangers of hypersexuality, but under the right circumstances, hypomania can cause us to be some of the most dazzling, passionate, and downright adventurous lovers. I'm talking the kind of passion that leaves people speechless or saying, "Wow, what just happened?" and "I need a cigarette after that." I mean, I'm not a smoker, I'm just being silly, but you get the idea. I'm sure there's been times where your spouse or your lover can attest to the spark in the bedroom. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, what about when we show no sexual desire for weeks or months? But again, I'm trying to keep this video on the track with positive stuff. So moving on, this next one is actually really cool for me personally because of how much I enjoy philosophy and deep thinking. Those of us who have bipolar can get a unique perspective on emotions. It's the whole yin and yang, what comes up must come down and then back up again thing. Many of us tend to analyze life or issues from different angles that others might not. I'm constantly thinking about things like, would this bother me if I was stable? Or is this really a good idea to do this? And will I still think so when I'm stable? Or would I worry about this or be angry about this if I wasn't symptomatic? Most people don't think so deeply about things. Even though it's basically another survival skill to avoid suffering, it can still help us cultivate an amazing sense of self-awareness and really get to know ourselves in a unique way. So here's the next one to think about. Achieving a good outcome when it comes to facing life's hardest challenges is basically the definition of resilience. We go through some of the most intense, traumatic, and horrible episodes of mania and depression, but then it always goes away. It always passes, and even if it takes a long time, each time we recover from an episode, there's an underlying sense of accomplishment that builds up our emotional resilience. Some research even suggests that our struggles with episodes can provide a kind of insulation for certain types of PTSD. Here's an example to put it into perspective. Look at people who walk on fire or coals. If I did that, I'd burn the crap out of my feet and I'd be in tears. But for those who have been conditioned by the fires, so to speak, they can endure things that most simply can't. Again, that's why I called this channel Polar Warriors. Our strength through adversity and the resilience I'm talking about is part of what makes us a warrior. All of our experience and learning more about our struggles can help us weather the, quote, normal ups and downs of life better than a lot of people who don't have this illness. So there's this psychologist by the name of John D. Gardner that came up with a really interesting theory about how mania might have fueled American innovation. So think about this. There have been links to relatively high rates of bipolar disorder in the United States to a gene pool heavily influenced by immigrants and our ancestors. There's the idea that many immigrants made the risky leap of coming to a new country due to a hypomanic trait. Things like a high tolerance for risk-taking, the drive to become a successful entrepreneur, extra creative vision, and enhanced self-confidence are all parts of bipolar disorder. This is also why so many people who have certain types of bipolar excel in the workplace and often achieve positions of leadership in their companies. That's not to say that it doesn't last forever or that there's not collateral damage to those around them when the mania is gone, but I'm keeping things focused on positive here. I've lost a lot of jobs in my time because of the illness and poor choices, but most of the time I reached the highest level of position in that company, like their top salesman, manager, supervisor, things like that. When I was harnessing the power of my hypomania, I almost seemed to fly up the corporate ladder. And sure, it was a long way to fall down once I got up there, but at least I saw the view from the top. Now, please understand that I am not celebrating hypomania here, which would set off alarm bells for any professionals watching this. We can get into trouble by believing that our successes are only attributed to bipolar symptoms. This is where someone might think, so if I go off my meds, then I'll probably be really creative and successful. We all know the price that we pay and everyone around us from quitting our meds, and it never equals the temporary rewards associated with hypomania, okay? Climbing the corporate ladder in an unhealthy manic way isn't worth losing your family or the entire job altogether. I'm just hoping that this helps people focus a little less on the things that they hate about the illness and remember some of their successes in life that might be attributed to some of it. So we made it to the 10th one, and this is a neat perspective also. There's a doctor by the name of Nasser Gami, and I really hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but he wrote about how the types of depressive pessimism can sometimes equate to more realistic assessment of circumstances in life. It's really easy for people to think, oh, that'll never happen to me, or the whole who cares, don't worry, be happy kind of situation. For us, we tend to be deep thinkers and might even consider consequences or outcomes that might be overlooked. This can sometimes help us prepare for situations that others might not be ready for. Now, there's a fine line between obsessing over negative thoughts and worrying ourselves sick compared to reflecting on a situation with the wisdom that comes from how much we've been through. Also, the divergent thinking that some of us experience when we're hypomanic can make a lot of us really good at creative problem solving. They say that we only use about, 10% of our brains, but when we get hypomanic, our brains fire so quickly that it almost feels like we're accessing a lot more. Both of these qualities of being able to assess circumstances more deeply or problem solve can make us more resilient people. All right, so what do you think about all this? I know it's pretty rare to hear the words positive and bipolar in the same sentence, but I don't want all my videos to just be about hardcore symptoms. I think it's also really important to focus on positive things that cultivate feelings of hope, motivation, and inspiration for some of us. I'd love to hear from some of you. Let me know in the comments some of the things that you've found to be positive about your bipolar experience. I want this to be an all-around positive video, so please keep it constructive if you join the conversation below. So, is my channel helping you along your bipolar journey, or have these videos made a difference in your life or made it better? If you want to get a lot more out of your Polar Warrior experience, like additional videos and content that isn't on YouTube, consider clicking the link at the top of the description so you can become an official Polar Warrior patron. It'll also allow you to communicate with me directly anytime if you have any questions or comments, because as the channel's grown, it's getting harder for me to respond to everybody here. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting what I do. I hope all of you have a great week and take some good self-care. I'll see you back here soon for the next Polar Warrior video. You guys are awesome.